Hey, welcome to another exciting episode of Tribe Talks. I'm very excited to sit down, and I keep saying that. I'm standing, you're sitting, and I've used that same joke 3 times already, so folks who watch each one of these, that's all right. I'm going to repeat my joke. I guess I'm a dad, so you get to repeat jokes when you're a dad now. But Pete, I'm excited to chat with you. Pete Rawlinson joining me today.
Hey Camden, good to be here, man. Looking forward to catching up.
Yeah, Pete. So I would love to start off with, and this is a big question to get us started, but what was it that drove you towards the coaching space? I know we chatted about it a little bit before. There's an interesting background there. I'd love if you could dive into that a bit.
Yeah, no, it's a kind of it's an interesting journey. I for the longest time I've been in the corporate world. I've been in tech as a marketer in a range of different technologies. I'm actually a physics grad, so I'm kind of into science, and I've always kind of been into. I've always had this kind of draw to kind of philosophy, psychology, bit of spirituality, and actually it's interesting doing the marketing job that it is a very analytical job, but it's also quite a creative role as well. So I was bringing some of that into the creative aspect of marketing, and also doing quite a lot of mentoring throughout my career for folks coming through the ranks of the business. And I think I just, after about 25 years in the industry, kind of being drawn to this kind of, I don't know, kind of getting to a chapter in my life where I wanted to kind of give back a little bit more than I was, and also, Camden, seeing the impact that the corporate world can have or the working world can have on people. People weren't showing as much resilience as I'd remembered in the past, and there were far too many people I was aware of that were just going through burnout. There was imposter syndrome. There was psychological safety in the workplace, cultural clashes, work-life balance was ruined. And, there were friends of mine that were really kind of hurting because of this. So in the end, I just kind of put two and two together and thought, look, I've been mentoring people. I feel like I have an approach to helping folks deal with some of these challenges. And there are a lot of people that need help. So a couple of years ago, I decided, right, I'm going to give coaching a go, and haven't looked back since. It's been amazing and some great results from the folks I've worked with.
I would love to dive into something you said there a little bit more, because you're talking about like that shift in the culture, what you were seeing in the workplace.
Yeah.
Do you think that was a shift in the actual like culture in the workplace, or do you think that was a shift in you becoming aware of what was going on there? Because I would love to get that perspective on it.
Great question. And it's because it's quite subjective, right? So I'm not sure there's a solid answer to it. I do think that as we went through COVID especially, and folks were not coming back into the office and having that face-to-face interaction, some people were starting to feel a little bit isolated. People who weren't great at communication were challenged even more with that. And even post-COVID, when people came back, it kind of left a residual impact on people, I think, that people are still seeing. And also, from a lot of people I talked to, COVID was an opportunity for them to reassess their life, their work-life balance, and many people identify themselves with a career completely. And when that felt like a little bit in jeopardy, especially through COVID, and when people were being laid off afterwards, people felt really threatened by that. So, to answer your question, I feel like there was a tangible change that I noticed, and not just there were other people that were saying it to me. In fact, one of the compelling reasons why I decided to move over to coaching was a few people told me, you're a great marketer, I hope, but you'd be great at helping people, because that's what I've been doing in companies before that, through this period of time where people were, they were suffering. And so, yeah, I'd say probably a combination of both, but I don't think it was just me getting more attuned to it. I think that what took place over these past 5 years or so was definitely instrumental in a change in the workplace that I've seen.
Yeah, I think about it as a forced pause, which I think is always an interesting thing for folks. I think of, in the rugby world, I've known of quite a few guys who, whether from a punch or getting landed on by somebody, break their jaw and they're quiet for a while, and all of a sudden they learn how to keep their mouth shut. And there's an interesting thing about that forced pause, and I'd agree. COVID definitely did that. I'd love to shift that into like a more proactive side of things. What do you think folks can do to to not need that forced pause, I guess, best way to put it, you know, to build pauses into their routine, maybe, so that they can have that kind of awareness and don't need to get locked down for a couple of years in order to become aware of like, wow, turns out I hate my job.
You don't have to hit rock bottom professionally to be able to get out of this, right? I think that speaks, Camden, to the approach that I take in coaching, because it's a little bit different from a lot of other approaches out there that tend to deal with kind of behavior that's been presented and trying to modify that behavior to be more positive. My approach is very much based on thought and the way that the mind actually works. And I've spent years studying this, from philosophy to psychiatry to psychology, and really taking a step back and thinking, you know, the way that we perceive the world, whether that is a physical threat or an email from the boss saying, can we meet tomorrow morning? And that's a sleepless night right there, right? It's nothing to do with the outside world, Camden, and all to do with the way you think about the outside world. So I kind of call it the inside out way of looking at life. And this is the case for absolutely every experience we have, not just professionally, personally as well. So, you know, I talk to people who, are going through challenges at work, but also people who are just anxious, depressed, not having a direction in their lives. And my approach is to sit back and help them understand the true nature of how their mind works, and that almost everything that they experience out there is not the result of, or does not create the feelings and the emotions and the negativity that they feel inside. That is purely down to the way they think about it. And that's good news, because you can control the way you think about things. And so many people, me included, get attached to our thoughts. They have a thought, typically a negative one, it's highly charged, and we hold on to it. I'm going to get fired. I'm not good at my job. Everyone's going to find out that I'm really not good, despite the fact that you have a resume that would say otherwise, right? And that's your mind making up a story that you believe, and you don't need to. So there are techniques involved that can release that, so that when you start to have these feelings, maybe of isolation or the work-life balance challenges, sit back and watch the way your mind's working, and it will tell you that it's false. Almost all these thoughts we have are illusions, and hopefully you don't have to go through a really negative experience to push yourself to the point where it's kind of what happened with me, is, you know, get to the point where like I stood back and watched my thoughts so I can't be them, and realized that. And that was just a profound insight that I realized years ago. And people that I talk to, that when the penny drops and they get that, things just get a lot easier and a lot less serious in life. And as a result, people are more resilient in their workplace, you know?
How do you help folks to kind of tease out whether, you know, those kind of thoughts and that misperception, then also with, hey, maybe you do need to quit that job? Because I always think that's an interesting thing. You know, we talk about this, you know, whether, you know, to get on the philosophy side of things like stoicism, people think a lot of the time it's like, well, no, then, you know, you just have to focus on what's inside of your control and you stay at that job and you just focus. It's like, well, no, you can still leave the job. You can still be in a bad environment. You can still have all of these things going wrong around you. You still need to focus on what's inside of your control, but you got to balance those two. What are your thoughts on helping folks to kind of balance that?
Yeah, good question. The two challenges that usually presented to me from clients is, you know, find ways of coping with the job, because I actually love the job and I like the people, but there is X, Y, and Z that are causing real problems for me, typically other employees or leadership. And the second one is, how do I leave this job? And so to speak to your question there, Camden, about kind of the courage to make a change, because I went through this, right? I went from corporate marketing in tech to a life coach. Like, pretty big change, I would say. And it was a scary prospect, because you are walking into the unknown. So to deal with that, the main approach and the main conversations I would have is all based on fear of the unknown. And it's fear of the unknown is probably the biggest fear that any human being can have. And then how can you mitigate that? And again, talking about your mind is presenting to you thoughts of, what if this happens? What if you can't pay the mortgage anymore? What if your wife and kids leave you because of that? And it can escalate into a ridiculous scenario that will never actually happen. You know, most things in life that we're worried about happening don't actually happen. And if they do, they're nowhere near as serious as we think they are. So leaving a job and your mind straight away saying, no, don't change. Even though you're not happy here, stay here because it's known. The other side of it is, you may be happier, but it's unknown. That's far too scary. Don't do it. So my approach would be to try to manage those thoughts, try to kind of let those thoughts go, don't hold on to them, and then focus on what's the upside, what's the opportunity of moving to another job that's going to be a lot more kind of, going to make you a lot happier in life. But the first thought is clear your mind of those thoughts. And one thing that happens, Camden, will find is when you start to clear your mind of these negative thoughts that people hold on to, you kind of start to reveal this innate kind of push that you have in your life to do something. There are people that that would be accountants that decided to be musicians because they've always wanted to be a musician, and it's just come out that this is what I need to do. And there's nothing to stop you trying that and doing that if you want to, besides fear. So let's mitigate fear, open up your true path, and let's help you follow that. That's what I typically do.
Talking about fear of the unknown, do you think the process there is more so about releasing that fear or defining the unknown? Because I think there's kind of two pieces at play there.
Yeah, great questions here. So I would
This
say...
is why I love talking with other leadership folks, because I can ask them really good questions and we can just go back and forth like this. I love it.
I tend to not to try to define the fear, Camden, because fear is almost always significantly magnified and exaggerated in most people's minds, right? So if I tend not, and same thing with the past, right? I tend not to go back and focus on things in the past because it brings up those memories, those thoughts. The past doesn't exist. It's a memory that you experience in the present. The future doesn't exist. It's just what ifs and imagination and worst case scenarios that you imagine right now in this moment. So when it comes to fear, I tend not to focus on the fear itself, but focus on the mechanisms of fear. Why is it that your mind tends to generate these thoughts? And the thing is, your mind generates thoughts of fear, mainly about the unknown when it comes to kind of moving jobs. It's trying to protect you, right? It's trying to say, it harkens back to cave people times, right? Where like, don't take a left outside of the cave because there's a saber-toothed tiger there that's gonna jump on you, right? Well, that saber-toothed tiger has now become, oh, should I ask for a raise? Or
Right.
will my boss be disappointed if I don't deliver this project on time? Or things like that, right? Ridiculous, but still we exaggerate. And what could be a meeting with your boss in the morning can turn into homelessness in about 15 seconds, right? So I tend not to focus on fear. I tend to focus on the mechanism of thought and use many examples, even from the clients themselves, where thinking in the shower in the morning, you can have within 10 seconds of hitting the shower, you can imagine the most awful things going on in your life. None of them ever come true. And the same is true of things in work as well. There's no difference. So what I tend to do is clear your mind of those thoughts, kind of don't hold on to them, let them go, because that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to just go by. And then start to think, all right, but now, rather than just jump to the next job, which I used to do, right? I'm a marketer, jump to the next marketing job. Is there another job you could do? Is there something else that's more interesting to you? Let's just have a conversation around what drives you, what are the things you like to draw. Maybe, I don't know, maybe retraining as an architect or so, I don't know. But let's start to paint a picture that you don't have to jump on the same hamster wheel, because it will bring you right back to where you are right now in this conversation. It's guaranteed. You need to change. So to answer your question more concisely, wouldn't focus on the fear, more focus on what's driving you to the future. I believe we only have one chance at life. So let's use it to the most.
I love that. And you put it really well there, Pete. Talking about fear brings to me another idea that I think people can kind of debate back and forth on in the leadership space and personal development, which is the idea of fear as fuel. The phrase of work beats worry. I think there's a lot of truth to that. I'm somebody who deals with anxiety, and there's times where it's like, yeah, no, I do feel better if I go get to work, but also, I could tell you if I can't sleep at night and I go work and I just keep working because that anxiety ain't going away, that's not helpful either. There's truth to it, but at the same time, it's not a holistic truth. What's your thought there with that idea of fear being fuel and using that fear?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're all in very much a product of all of the experiences we've had through our lives, Camden, right? So in that respect, we are more unique than fingerprints in terms of human beings. So different people have different ways of dealing with things. And different people are resilient in different ways, so can actually get by doing the fear is fuel. So I've worked with people on both sides that do both. I typically find for most people, it is a combination, right? These people, especially the folks that are really driven and really Maybe they're in leadership positions. They really want to have a successful career. That they do get a lot of energy from fighting through the fear. But again, I'll go back to it's actually okay to fight through the fear if you understand the nature of fear. If you understand that these are just thoughts that are going through your head and they're not real, then actually, when you decide to fight through it, you're fighting through it not as an enemy, but it's kind of like more of a ghost that you're fighting through, right? And I've actually seen people deliver better results when they know that this ongoing fear, wherever that fear is, right? A lot of it is imposter syndrome, or or not being treated fairly or something. That's you thinking that. The outside world is just being the outside world. Your boss is being your boss. Your team are being your team. You are reacting to it your way. Fight through it, but understand it. And, then you get success without a lot of the stress associated with it. Because a lot of the stress is a misunderstanding of what's driving you, especially the negative side of what's driving you. So, yeah, clarity helps maintain that balance, if you like.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think that makes a lot of sense. Talking about all this different stuff, and your marketing background, physics, working in tech, all these different things. One of the things that comes to mind for me is that balance you talked about between between the art and the science, or in the coaching, between the philosophy and the psychology. There's a really interesting thing there. Could you talk some about how you balance those two? Actually, let's start. I want to start specifically in the marketing space. Could you talk some about how you kind of balance those two? The rigidity of the scientific approach from your physics background, while also this whole thing of you're dealing with people, and people are weird, and people do weird things. You have to deal with that whole side of it. How do you balance those two there?
Yeah. I mean, look, but marketing. Especially, I was doing business to business marketing, so it's becoming increasingly analytical, increasingly scientific. So, there are KPIs, there are objectives that, quantifiable objectives to hit, which was key to the success of the business. Now, my science background kind of had an affinity to that, right? I'm a bit of a data geek, and I enjoyed that part of it. But also and this is why I kind of really enjoyed the marketing role, is it's not just delivering revenue and pipeline for businesses. It's also coming up with a cogent narrative to position the business in their space, right, and to differentiate adequately. And oftentimes I'd use that creative, philosophical, psychological side to craft some really interesting narratives and some strategic messaging about the business, not just about Simon Sinek talks about the why companies do something, right? Most companies talk about what they do and how they do it. I would really focus on why. So I wouldn't really talk in a lot of my narratives in the businesses I've worked in, not necessarily we are our company that develops this platform to serve these customers. It's no, we are breaking through the barriers of transformation in industry to provide more freedom to work to the workforce, or something like that, right? Much more aspirational. And I just tend to find that psychologically people are attracted more when you have goals like Bill Gates had, I want to put a PC on everybody's desk, or Steve Jobs saying, I want to break the status quo with Apple. And to do that, he just happened to build computers and phones, but that's what he wanted to do, and people were attracted to that. So that's where the kind of the creative side came into it. And then, in terms of dealing with people, I had a hard time, Camden, dealing with people that didn't agree with me. I had a hard time dealing with people that spoke their mind. And especially as I became more senior in leadership, my ego was kind of taking over, and I have the experience, I'm making decisions, and you're doubting me. That would cause me some problems, that would cause me some sleepless nights, and how do you deal with that? And I come back to this, this different way of looking at the world, where it's like, hang on, that person is just as unique as I am, because we're the sum total of our experiences. We're both looking at the same situation and reacting very differently because we are different. And you need to, kind of respect that and navigate your way through it. Now, I'm not saying navigation is going to be a piece of cake when you stand back and look, but it does. It absolutely makes it easier when you look at that person that's causing you some stress in the workplace and say, you're just as human as I am. You believe your opinion as much as I do. I am having negative thoughts about reacting to you, and those thoughts aren't real. So let's just let the thoughts go. Don't try and control them, and don't try and fight them. Let them go. And something else kicks in, Camden. Some kind of, I've noticed it almost every time. Some kind of, I don't know, a more collegiate, a more kind of a nicer way of interacting with people, and they see that because they see it in themselves. And relationships do get better. Maybe not always 100%, but at least I don't feel as stressed dealing with people. I don't know if that answers the question, but there was a few points.
I think so. I think so, and also I think to your credit and to what we've been talking about, it is each person is different, so that's how you view it, and I think you do a great job painting that picture of it's not one size fits all though. The last thing I kind of want to dive into, and oh my gosh, we could talk all day. I got a lot of ideas, but the one that I keep coming back to is the relationship between marketing and leadership specifically. With Tribe and Purpose, we like to talk about the idea of not just creating a vision for the company, but then selling that vision to your team, and you have to get them to buy into your vision and how important that is for a team's success. What are your thoughts on either that little bit of philosophy there from our side, or just the connection of marketing and those skill sets towards leadership as well?
Yeah, so I've been doing the marketing role now. I had been doing it for over 20 years, and I've seen quite a lot of change there. Like when I first started marketing, we did the t-shirts and the posters, right? We had coasters and pens, and it's really changed now, where there is a significantly important seat at the top table there, not only in terms of positioning the business, but contributing most of the time. Marketing, my marketing team will be contributing more than 50% of revenue to the business. That buys you a seat at the leadership table, a seat sometimes at the board table as well. Now, in terms of the relationship, when it came to the more analytical side, if I was going to the leadership team and saying, I'm hitting my revenue contribution numbers, that was an easy conversation to have. To have conversations around, I would like to position the business this way. That's much more subjective. More subjective than a lot of other roles that are sitting at that table. And in that respect, the marketing role is actually, I'm not saying it's the most difficult, but it is a challenging role in that you're dealing with different people's opinions. And of course, again, using this approach, everyone around the table is different. They're going to react differently to the same message, right? One of the things that I would do, though, and this is not news to anybody listening to the podcast, is to socialize the idea first and come out with what am I trying to achieve? This isn't just Pete walking in there saying, we are going to be the future of employee engagement, for example. There is a reason why, there is a journey that I've been on to get to this point. Oftentimes I would try, and especially someone like the head of sales, the CEO, I would try and bring them with me way before, so that they almost feel like they had a contributory role in forming the message in the first place. So by the time now I'm sitting with the leadership team, and this has happened a number of times, there's already a number of consenting heads in the room, because I've already iterated the positioning a number of times with key people around that table, so that now you don't always, a lot of the time it's a democracy, right? And there may be a couple of dissenters, but if the majority enjoy it, it resonates with them, we move forward. If then I can come back and tie that message to the analytical, to the revenue, to their KPIs, then, and that's what I always try and do, say, look, this is what this message delivered for the business. Then that just buys you more social capital next time you need to come to that table again,
Love that. And Pete, love all this. It's a lot of really, really great insights. Thank you so much for sharing with it. And Pete, just before we shift gears here, I would love to just hear, how do folks get in contact with you, sign up to work with you, anything in that kind of a vein?
Yeah, a couple of things. So the company is called LifeShift, and the website is newlifeshift.com. So you go in there, check me out. There's a blog. I've also written a book on all of this as well, called Cloudless Realities, that ties together the physics, the spirituality, the psychology. So that's on there as well. But you can book a coaching call, or if you guys are interested in group sessions, happy to help you. Check me out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pete.
Thanks, Camden. Great talking to you, man. Camden, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Pete. How about yourself?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, good to catch up again. So look, I've heard a lot about Tribe and Purpose. Why don't we just start off by tell me about what you and Otis are doing over there?
Yeah, the best way to put it, I'd say, is we're just a couple of leadership nerds who love talking about leadership, sharing our stories, and trying to help to create a legacy of leaders. We strongly believe that great leaders create great organizations. You have great organizations, you can make a better community, and better communities are our way of trying to make the world a little bit of a better place while focusing all of what's on inside of our control, what's in our skill set there. And so yeah, that's what we love to do, and love talking with folks like yourself about leadership.
That's awesome, man. As you know, I've been in the corporate world and leadership world at the C level for a number of years now, and I don't know whether you've seen any kind of changes over the past. Certainly, maybe as a result of COVID or just what's going on in the world right now. But have you guys seen any kind of change in leadership that would call for what Tribe and Purpose are looking to do?
Yeah, I think the big thing is, and I think COVID really jumpstarted a lot of this, but I think it's also a generational shift. We think back to going back 70 years or so to the idea of the gold watch at the factory. You work at the factory every single day till the day you retire. They give you the gold watch. You retire, and it's a beautiful thing. And there were people that were sold that dream, and then their kids tried to do the same thing, and then those factories closed, and they're like, oh my gosh, wait, that dream doesn't make sense. And so then those folks did the best they could, found a new path, and sold that to the next generation. And I think there's always that kind of generational path as far as what life means, what business means, how you should have that relationship with the business. And I think now there's a big shift towards call it like the employee empowerment or whatever you'd want to label it there. But this idea of, you need to take care of the employee. It's not just a transactional relationship. You need to, and if it's going to be transactional, you better make it a pretty freaking good transaction. But at the end of the day, we want people, we want to work somewhere where we feel connected. We want to work somewhere that aligns with our purpose. We want to work somewhere with a leader who actually cares about us. And I think that shift puts a lot of weight onto the leadership. I think that the kind of old school, hey, do what I say. Otis always says like the dad rule of because I said so. Because I said so leadership doesn't exist or shouldn't exist anymore. People don't want to work for that kind of person. And that's why you get, the quiet quitting, great resignation, throw out all those other, buzzwords of the last few years. But that all just comes from people not feeling connected, not feeling cared about at work. And I think people can shake their fist and go, nobody wants to work. Why aren't people working hard? All this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, the responsibility goes back to the leader to change the system and to create an environment where those people do want to work.
So do you think then, this is really interesting, right? Because I agree with everything you've said there. And there is a new generation of employees now becoming leaders. Do you think this next generation, maybe the generation after that, are they closer to achieving this goal as the older generation of the golden watches phases out? Do you feel like a new wave of generations coming in that's more amenable to this? What are your thoughts on that one?
I think so, but I do think there's still some legwork to be put into it. I think that there's you can have an idea, you can have a basic vision of what a leader should look like, but it takes some time, takes a lot of hours to find out what that really looks like. If you want to be a complete hands-off leader and, hey, Pete, you can show up whenever you want, and, oh, you don't feel like working today, that's all good. You can be like that, but the business might not last. And so you have to have this point of marrying that philosophy with the reality of the business. And so I think that there's a lot of really well-intentioned folks who are looking to change these things, but you have to go back to find that middle ground of where the reality meets that philosophy. Because if you just go and you try to play that, that fantasy world, this paradise where everything is perfect and everyone wants to work and all this kind of stuff, and you're gonna run into different sets of problems. There's a reason that we have leadership structures. I think of my wife worked at a nonprofit, which I won't name because she's worked at a few, so I'm hiding it a little bit there. But where they had the flat hierarchy. And you know what happened? Because it's a great philosophy. Hey, we don't have a boss here, Pete. We all work together. Everyone contributes to the vision. Well, when you have a team of 20 people and everyone has to be in every meeting, now I can't do my job because that's your job. You should be leading us. And so I think there's a real mechanism of leadership. And at the same time, you have to recognize how things are changing. I go back to, if we were just talking on Pete's half, on your half of this, joint interview, and folks, if you're just watching my half, go watch Pete's half. Pete got a lot of really good insights on there. But I think about the philosophy of things, and I go back to this idea of meta-modernism, which I love. And it's this idea that there are pieces of truth in every single philosophy that you're going to look at. There's always something that makes sense, you know. And if you just completely throw it out, you know, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and you're trying to start from scratch every single time, you're going to make a bunch of mistakes. And so I think we as leaders need to take the time to go, okay, you know, the golden watch generation. What was right there? What did they get right? Hey, they had a commitment to their organization. That's a really, really good thing. Now, did the organization take care of them? No. Okay, that's a bad thing. Let's not do that part, right? And then we could go into this stuff. And I think of, you know, the Otis always loves this example of, you know, the ping pong table and the kegerator inside of the break room, right? And it's like, okay, hey, is that really what makes a team culture? No, not really. But should we give folks a little bit of, you know, fun? Should we have that kind of environment? Yeah, that makes sense too. So I think it's about taking the time to tease out all of those different pieces and trying to put together into that meta-modernism approach. And I think the reason that people struggle with that is because it takes a lot of work. It's a lot easier to say, you know, hey, we're just going to go this direction. Taking the time to go and tease out what was the thing that guy got right. That boss that I hated so much, what was he doing right? Oh, hey, did you notice we hit every deadline? That's pretty good for the business. That's an important thing. Now, maybe, you know, he was a jerk and he was yelling all the time and all that kind of stuff. Don't take that part, but you want to still be able to try to learn those different lessons and marry them all together into your approach. And I think there's a lot of folks that are out there doing that. And I think that's also partially my bias because that's, you know, my philosophy as I look out into the world. But I'm hopeful with that people are going to continue to make that change.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You know, and I think that, you know, a lot, certainly from my experience, a lot of them motivate because people, a lot of like leadership that I've encountered anyway, understand this at an intellectual level. Like, yeah, I do need to do that, right? But the main motivation is I don't want to lose people. I don't want to invest in someone, all of that IP, and then have them leave because they're not happy. So I'm going to, you know, behave in a way that's going to keep them happy. I'm not sure that's the best approach to doing it. One of the things I think that people tend to overlook sometimes is the kind of the opportunity cost of creativity in individuals. You know, in a lot of my marketing roles, I'd open up ideas to how to market the business to the entire organization. And Camden, some of the best ideas did not come from the marketing team. They came from software developers, they came from accountants, they came from HR people, because they had the headspace and they were in an environment where they were free to think outside of the box. And hey, the human mind is very creative, right? So there are huge advantages outside of just retention, I think, that drives leadership to make sure you do right by your employees, you know?
Yeah, and you know, talking about the creativity there, I love this. Big fan of the Freakonomics podcast with Stephen Dubner, and I remember he had an episode a while back talking about creativity, and one of the things that he said that I really loved was the idea of like explosive creativity, this huge innovation. And where does that tend to come from? Is people who don't know what they're doing. Like it's people who come in and go, "Hey, here's the rules. You gotta do A, B, C," and you're like, "I kind of like F, G, H," and you completely throw things out. And when you do that, you get a whole new perspective. And I think that's what you're talking about there. And that's what really good leaders do is they tap into the rest of the team and try to create that collaboration for those new perspectives. We talk about it all the time with Tribe and Purpose of cross-training. Otis will talk about that's the thing that one of the many things that make Green Berets so great at what they do was this idea of cross-training. You know, we're going to spend days doing each other's jobs because then it does a few things. One, I get a new perspective on your job. I get a new respect for you and what you do. I know that your job is hard. You know, all the marketers get to go in and be like, wow, salespeople work really freaking hard. Yeah, they do. Just like you work really hard. And you get that kind of perspective. Then you can bring new ideas to them. But then also you get a new perspective. That new department can bring a new idea back to you. So you go in, then this is something I try to do with business all the time of going and looking at a different industry and saying, how are they doing things there? And how can I pick, just like the metamodernism approach, what is the one thing there that I can take and apply into my business and make us better? And if cross-training is a great way to build that inside of your team.
So tell me, so I'm curious then, because this is all making complete sense to me, just coming from a leadership and now from a coaching perspective. Can you give me a bit more detail then, Camden, on exactly what is Tribe and Purpose doing then to help this leadership challenge?
Yeah, so I mean, aside from the specifics of the program, I'm not going to go into the offers on those kind of things there.
Yeah.
But it's about building systems and processes inside of your team where it's no longer just having a leader who is going to do that themselves. Like I said, I'm going to go look at other industries there, but you have to build a system inside where you are going to send people back and forth. You have to get them into these other departments. And you have to create space for that. One of the other things that I love is this idea of work-ons. It's a great little tool where you're giving people time to work on themselves, develop themselves, whether it's just personally inside of their role, that kind of stuff there. And all those are just two different little mechanisms, but you build out a system where your team is going to be doing that consistently, whether it's weekly, monthly, whatever it is, and then keeping that going. We talked on your half there about the idea of tracking these things and systemizing it a bit more and kind of marrying the philosophy with the application and the reality there, right? Yeah. I think that when you're able to put those pieces together, you have to have a system that's going to keep it going. If you just go out and you say, hey, it's kind of the cultural thing of like, you go out and you say, hey, we're a family. Well, if we're not doing anything to make us feel like family, then you're just kind of talking, right? Yeah. Hey, we're going to work in each other's departments. Okay, well, Pete, when am I going to go over there? And instead, it becomes a real application of it's like, hey, 2 p.m. on Tuesdays, you're going to go over to the sales department, and they're going to take a guy from the sales. He's going to go over to marketing. And then we're going to do that every Tuesday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. And you create this literal time block where you get people working in that. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people miss. There's this idea of like leadership on this really like philosophical level of what it should look like, creating space for people and all that kind of stuff. But you have to bring that back into the reality of the business world to, really say even like the management approach to it of it's like there has to be an actual mechanism. You have to have KPIs, you have to have measurables in order to get people actually doing those things, because otherwise it's just going to fall apart. It's just like hey, we're family. Doesn't mean anything. You have to actually show what you're doing with it.
Yeah. So let me ask you, before we wrap up, I'm really curious because obviously you guys are enmeshed in leadership and culture. What do you see, Camden, as the future in leadership? Paint a picture for us for the future there.
Yeah, I think the future for leadership is bright. I think that, all of these problems that we're talking about, whether it's looking back at past generations and then seeing the people from those generations that are leading and they might be a bad boss and those kind of things. I think that each one of those negative things is an opportunity to get better. And I think as long as leaders carry that optimism, which I strongly believe is a core skill as a leader, is to be optimistic, right? Recognize each of those different negative things and find a way to make them better. Don't take things as don't treat things like they're static. Nothing is stagnant. Things are always changing, and recognize that. And when you do that, you can help to move yourself forward. And I think that, any of these different pieces that we talked about, they're just opportunities to get better as a leader. I think if you're a boss, not a leader, these things scare you. And, the idea of your team wanting to feel more connected and needing more and wanting to pay raises and all this kind of stuff, it's scary. But if you're a real leader who actually cares about your team, then it's not scary. It's just another opportunity to step up as a leader. Like you talked about the idea of we're talking about people leaving jobs and all that kind of stuff of it's like, well, then as the leader, then why would I invest in you if I think you might leave, or oh gosh, I think you're stealing from me, you're taking my money, all that kind of crap that those people who aren't really good leaders will say. I flip that on its head and say, well, it's my opportunity to invest in you. If I'm investing in you for a short amount of time, then it's a short amount of time. You know my sports background with rugby, and I think about it in sports. You see it all the time. The like coaching family tree. And I think that is a big shift that I would love to see with leaders, is looking at that leadership family tree. And what I mean is if you look at like, some of the great football coaches like Nick Saban, if you go out and you look at all the people that he's worked with, they're all over the place doing great things. And he's not over there like, well, Pete was only with me for a year, so he's a jerk. He left. It's like, no, I taught Pete a bunch, and Pete's over there doing amazing things. And I think that's a much more powerful place to be. And so, like I said, each one of those like negatives, the quiet quitting, the great resignation, the golden watch, all those different things that we're kind of poking at, those are just opportunities to do a better job. Those are opportunities to learn from other people's mistakes or from your mistakes and to get better. And so I think the future's bright. I think it's a exciting place to be as long as, the leaders keep carrying that optimism, keep trying to get better at their job.
Yeah, sounds very positive. And
I try to be.
like it's really upbeat, and I think from what you've shared with us, Camden, it feels very positive. And like I say, I have seen that change, and I think there is more and more now people coming into the leadership position, really understanding that and the value of these people that work for them. I know it sounds kind of strange to say, but they are human beings at the end of the day.
Yep.
It's very few leaders that I've had certainly in my more distant past would ask me how my weekend was, how I'm feeling at the moment. Like they just don't ask those kind of questions. And you are a human being. You're not just kind of a robot doing a job. And if more and more people in leadership really, really see through that, I think we're in the right direction.
And it could be. I want to add something there because I think it's an interesting. And I got a quick story on it because I think it can be both. And they're like you can still have business, and you can still work, and you got to still get things done. You got to hit deadlines, all that kind of stuff. And you can still care for people. And the story that's coming to mind was out at practice at the U of A a couple weeks ago. And I will sit and talk with players and chat with them all the time about what they're doing. They're on spring break right now. I know where all of them are going, all that kind of stuff, right? And I have those real connections with them. There's also a moment, and it's a funny one, a couple weeks ago at practice where we're there and I'm like, we're kind of circled up and we're right in between drills. And I'm like, hey, how's it going? And he's goes, oh, my shoulder. I was like, oh, we're not really getting into that right now. And it was a joke, and I was messing with him, busting his balls a bit, but it was like, hey, we're not getting into that right now. Talk to me after practice. I will talk to you for hours. But it's right now. How's it going? Good. Cool. How's it going, Pete? Good. Awesome. Like that superficial level. Yeah, there's still a place for it. Right. And I think you can recognize there's a time, where we just need to get to work and we got to keep going on things. And there's also a time where you and I could sit down and talk for hours about your aspirations, your purpose, your vision, all that kind of stuff. You can do both. And I think that's an important piece there.
Absolutely. And just one final, the ability for, or the freedom for an employee to say to their leader, their manager, I'm not doing great. Didn't have a great weekend. Not feeling up for it. I'm absolutely going to work, but I'm not feeling great about it. I've had that happen a few times to me as a leader, and I'm like, absolutely fine. It's not like I'll battle through it. It's like, no, understand. First, I love the fact that you're able to say that to me, and B, you're going to get a really sympathetic reaction from me in that. Now, you can't be saying that to me every single day, but when things aren't going right for you, that's part of I call it like the whole person approach to an employee. You're a whole person. You're not just a resource. And the more I think we treat them as such, the more productive employees will be.
Which takes more work, but that's the name of the job, right?
It's worth it, and it's worth it for you to go to bed at night feeling, you know what, I'm a decent human being, and I can't say that of everybody I've worked with.
Oh, no kidding! Oh my gosh, that's a whole other rabbit hole.
Camden, how can people find out more about Tribe and Purpose?
Yeah, the best place to go is 10xyourteam.net. On there, you'll see 3 sections: our DIY, which is our podcast, a lot of really cool free tools there. Our done with you programs, which is a Green Beret leadership program to build a team of leaders so you can be more effective. All these things we're talking about. If you have a whole team that thinks that way, it's a powerful freaking place to be. And then the other done with you program is for solopreneurs who want to gain more leverage and build that skill set so that they can be a CEO instead of building up a business and then going, oh crap, I'm not a leader. I just had a really good idea. And then lastly, and we don't do much with this, but we also offer some fractional COO services. That's more of our done for you. But that's the best place to go, 10xyourteam.net, and just find the right leadership tool for you because there's a lot of cool stuff on there.
Awesome. It's great talking to you, Camden. Best of luck to you.
Thank you so much, Pete. It's been a lot of fun.
Take care, man.